Well, what the heck? Oh, don't tell me that. Are you serious? You guys, well, first of all, hopefully you can hear me. I have no idea how to figure out if you can. But I had something that I wanted to show you, and now it won't show up. This is ridiculous. Well, I guess we're just going to have to do it without it, honey. So, if anyone is here, please let me know if you can say something in the chat because I have been having some trouble going live, worse than usual. Anybody? Oh my goodness. I think I might have to restart this because now it's just not really working. No, it said, oh no, it says 2 watching. Okay, someone's here. You're just lurking. That's fine. All right, so I'm sorry. I just have to make sure, right? Yep, it says public. Okay. Okay. Makes me nervous to drop so much information and not know if anybody's listening, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to trust that we're in the right place. All right. So, what we are talking about today is why you feel like you have failed in some way. If you've been feeling like that lately, or if me saying that is like, wow, I couldn't put a finger on it, but I knew there was something going on, this message is for you, okay? You know, I had reached an impasse. Like, I had a dilemma. I was trying to figure out how the 2025 Mercury retrogrades were connected to 2024's retrogrades, why the spring months of 2025 seemed so heavy, but also like an ending slash beginning point, and why the time between early November 2024 to spring of 2025 has been so intense, so heavy, and life altering, and mostly in the negative for a lot of people that I talked to. I needed to know how the Pisces energy from the Mercury retrograde and eclipse seasons, it kind of seemed almost invasive or like some sort of interference. And so many of you know I am not an astrologer. I don't really know how to even begin to ask those kinds of questions. And suddenly I just got this huge download. And so hopefully if there are any of you who are astrologers, if you can confirm some of the things that came through, or even expand on it, that would be amazing. But I believe that I have some really relevant, pertinent information for you today. And we're going to start with the connection between last year's retrogrades and this year's retrogrades where Mercury is concerned, and a couple other things as well. But I believe that the season that we've just been in is one of the most cosmically concentrated and karmically potent time frames that we've had in recent years. I do think that the intensity, the interference, what felt almost like an inversion, even, all of this, it was trying to show us something. So, okay, let's just think about Mercury retrogrades, that some of the themes, right? In 2024, they were in fire and earth signs. In 2025, it kind of moved into water and fire. And this elemental shift, especially the pivot into like Pisces and Scorpio, it does signal a deepening of the mental, emotional, and spiritual processing Mercury demands. Okay. There is a cyclical connection here as well. In April of 2024, Mercury retrograded in Aries, impulsive, headstrong, kind of beginnings energy. And then in March, April of 2025, Mercury retrograde was in Aries, sliding back into Pisces though. Okay. And I think I see steam, right? The fire becoming steam. Action gets a little bit murky and our consequences really echoed. So I think that the Aries retrograde of 2024 planted seeds, but the 2025 retrograde, it ripped them up. It re-examined them in the Pisces fog, and it asked, did you act too soon? Did you misunderstand your mission? So you're going to be learning your lessons before proceeding is kind of the message I got, right? Like you have to. And that is the Pisces Aries bridge. It's the final test before you leave behind the illusions and you take divinely inspired action. Now, spring of 2025, this has been all about intensity, closure, and rebirth. And it's almost like we're seeing spring of 2025 as a birthing canal. There's these cosmic contractions. They began late in 2024 and they're culminating into this spiritual and psychological rebirth by mid 2025. If you can hear my voice right now, will you like the video? I really can't tell if anyone is here. And it's very strange. Normally someone says something, but how do I, oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Okay. People can hear me. All right. I'm gonna keep going. Thank you so much. Cause for the past like 5 minutes, I've been thinking no one is here. Thank you so much. All right. Good. So yeah, rebirth. I think that that's where we are now. And I looked at the overlap. So there's some astrological overlaps. Okay, we've got Mercury retrograde in Pisces. I got, confusion, psychic noise, soul review from that. There's Venus retrograde in Pisces and Aries. That's reevaluation of values, of love, self worth. There's Mars retrograde in the shadow. Okay, so we've got repressed anger, stalled drive, ego in review. There was eclipse season, so we've got karmic windows, faded closures and initiations. Then there's Saturn in Pisces moving towards Aries. And what I got from that is we have final lessons in dissolution, boundaries, karmic accountability before a new 30-year cycle begins, which was like, whoa, this actually hits really hard. There was the tonal lunar eclipse in Virgo. Okay. That was like mid-March. That I got health, service, and daily structure purging. All right. So the way we live and operate. We've got the solar eclipse in Aries that happened at the end of March, and that was about identity reset and ignition of a new life path. I just kind of went through all the different things and in my tiny little non-astrologer mind tried to figure out what did all this mean. And the common denominator, you know what I heard? Like once I looked at all these words, this isn't a reset, it is a spiritual exorcism. I believe the past is being dismantled at a cellular level. I've already recorded two New Wave Prophecy downloads, and one of them is about spiritual DNA. And when I tell you the things that came through as a part of this download, out of this world. Now, we need to talk about this Pisces energy because this is really where that's where that interference or initiation kind of energy came in. This is where I noticed something was up. Now, Pisces influence in this retrograde and eclipse season is not gentle. Okay. You're not just being invited to reflect. You're being forced to surrender. We all are. And the distortions from Pisces here is there could be like fog, gaslighting, spiritual bypassing. I have been hearing through all these downloads. There could be loops of confusion and disassociation, emotional flooding and martyrdom. But there is purpose behind the chaos here. Pisces is at the end of the zodiac, right? It's the dissolver. When Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and eclipse energy kind of gather in Pisces like this, it can feel like our plans are unraveling, our mind doesn't want to cooperate, time starts to blur, our compass starts to spin, but it is necessary. It's the necessary loss of, I think, ego control that precedes the divine clarity that I think this season is making us wonder, will it ever come? Will it ever happen? You're not being punished. That's what I kept hearing, is it? Because that's what it felt like. And for a lot of us who've been doing the work, for who've been working so hard, to feel like we were being punished was just like a slap in the face. But it turns out that this is a process of purification. So I really want to talk again about why November of 2024 to spring of 2025 feels so life altering, even though it also feels a little bit oppressive. So in November of 2024, we had a lot of, I think it's almost like I see it as like transits that were stacked all on top of each other and just weighing you down. So we had Mercury retrograde in Sag and then Scorpio, which again, that's something I noticed is like that the end of these retrogrades, they were shifting into this emotional space after being in fire. And I was like, what the hell's going on? We have exposing truths, I think stripping of illusions was a major part of that season and transforming communication. And we have Mars in retrograde shadow. That was just identity confusion, energy drains. There was Venus in shadow. Okay. And that was in Pisces. So there were cracks in self love and relationship values were showing really hard. Then we went into like winter and spring of 2025. So that was just November, what I was just naming. Okay. That's like, hopefully that gives some people some like, okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about coming into 2025. So we had Mercury retrograde in Pisces, we had Venus retrograde in Pisces, Aries, we had Mars retrograde in Leo, Cancer, the lunar and solar eclipses in Virgo and Aries, the Pluto retrograde shadow began, and Saturn and Uranus intro retrograde shadows like around Aprilish and onward. And so what I got from all this is there was this wave of almost like dismantling energy. Mental for Mercury, emotional from Venus, physical from Mars, spiritual from Pisces, and structural from Saturn and Pluto. When I started to realize what I was seeing, it was where I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't know. Can we handle this? Like it just felt like a lot. And it felt also a little bit unnecessary and delayed. There was a lot of questions that I had because I'm going through this stuff along with everybody else. So I'm assuming that if I feel that way, kind of like, what the heck, that everybody else probably does too, even if it's not about the same stuff. And what I got about this was don't worry, there are some cycles of rest or like integration periods, and we're in one right now. We are in an integration phase between April 26th and it'll end June 29th. So as the time I'm recording this, we have about a month and a half left, and that's where I think we're able to even breathe and process what's been going on in the first place. And we'll have another one after Lionsgate and all that. I mean, it's in around the end of August to around the end of October. All right. And it's almost like post op recovery. That's the vibe I get from it. These are times when clarity starts to return, the realignment sets in, there are windows for embodying the truths that maybe you were too clouded to grasp earlier. But I felt called to that Pisces and Scorpio energy in 2025. I wanted to know why they kept it just felt like creeping in kind of energy. And what I saw was that these are the two signs most associated with the unconscious, psychic entanglement, karmic unraveling, and also kind of like the death and rebirth cycles. And their combination across Mercury and Venus retrogrades, eclipses, the outer planet activations, it does create a theme of soul exposure, emotional catharsis, and letting go of illusions and attachments. So if Pisces is the dissolver, Scorpio is the transformer. And together they don't just clean house, they burn it down and wash away the ashes. It has been a mind F, to say the least, since then. And I think the reason why it feels so cosmic and critical is because it's not just difficult, guys. It is an initiatory season. You know, we're completing a long karmic chapter. The mental fog is to force surrender. It's not really about sabotaging us. It's kind of just saying maybe I just need to stop for a second and give in. I think the heavy, just back to back retrogrades are pointing to that extended spiritual labor. And the Aries and Pisces retrograde kind of bring the birth canal identity. I really started to see more clearly once I got past what felt like the disrupting energy of Pisces and realized the depth, that we're going to. I think that you can feel upside down in this because your old perspective is dying, and that Pisces interference is actually your recalibration, okay? So I guess my question, when I'm getting these downloads, I think the reason where some of us receive certain downloads is because Divine knows some of us will ask certain questions. So me being me, I'm going to ask very specific things that matter to me, which most likely, if you're drawn to this, probably would matter to you. And I wanted to know what we could do, especially if we were in like a feminine energy when it came to relationships and partnerships, because I think that for a lot of us, that is where this energy was tied to. Like, even if we're single and we're not interacting with anybody right now and haven't been since November, somehow the pain of this season was still tied to those partnerships. And I'm thinking, well, then how do we leave behind these illusions? How do we leave behind our old self? You know, if the Pisces energy is initiation rather than interference, how does this play into the idea that what we thought we were being forced to accept in 2024 was actually a test to see if we were willing to surrender, but it couldn't be revealed until now? You know, that we were seeing things from the opposite perspective, even down to like positive or good beings that were nearby, kind of felt scary. You know, that we've been getting all these weird signs that something bad is coming. Do you guys remember when I heard there's a bogey in the wings or there's a bogey in the wind? And I was like, what the heck is that? And then we find out we're the bogey, and it's like, wait, what? And so I kept hearing spiritual pregnancy, spiritual pregnancy. And then I was like, what about it? And I heard high risk. And my brain just was like, and so I had this massive flow. I think that Pisces and Scorpio are going to bring us those kinds of almost like mystical metaphors that we're seeing, but we have to unpack it, right? We have to figure out what's the divine agenda. And I do think that there is an energy of testing, right? That's why we had this illusion of interference. I think that, and I want to make sure that any of my Pisces or my Scorpio friends, please understand, we're not talking about your sign and how it shows up in people. We're talking about the bigger energy here, okay? So when we're talking about the lower octave of Pisces, I don't mean anybody like you. I mean, let's talk about Pisces, right? And I think it clouds discernment. I think it can make the mirror foggy. And we saw scary presences, but we didn't know they were guides. We felt like a victim, but we didn't know we were being initiated. And in 2024, it wasn't that we were being punished. We were just, I think, being given a test in trust. We were asked, can I walk through the fog with no proof and still choose faith? So it was almost like an inverted mirror. You know, we mistook allies for threats. We took delay as rejection. We interpreted silence as abandonment. And it was actually all just sacred gestation. And that is exactly how Pisces initiates. It kind of turns the ego inside out so that the true spiritual eye can open. And the real revelation of you are the bogey, you know, you've always been the disruptor. You are also the liberator. You were the force you feared. And now you can reclaim it consciously. You know, this is huge. Now, we also have this idea of the spiritual pregnancy. Remember, I heard high risk, and it was like, why high risk? And it says, because the birth is not physical. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, it's soul level, and the labor is long. I think that in November of 2024, around, I think there was like Pluto was direct, Mercury and Mars were entering retrograde shadows. That was where we conceived, in that darkness. In the winter, we were in our first trimester, and it was unstable and very confusing. And they usually tell people, don't tell anybody when that you're pregnant when you're in your first trimester. And I think that we didn't know what was going on, and we didn't feel comfortable or safe being out in the world, you know? And spring came in, and we had eclipse, and then there was this retrograde storm, and that was that second trimester chaos. When you're thinking things should calm down now, like I'm getting further along, I shouldn't be having karmic contractions. Okay? Like, what in the world? But what I have received here is that the Sirius gateway, basically the time around early July into the Lionsgate portal, which is early August, is this birth window. Now, remember, some of us are early risers, some of us are late bloomers. And so, depending on your energy and your gifting, you could be a little bit off of this timeline. But I think that for the most part, it's going to hit hard. And what I see here during this birth window is that's when Mercury leaves shadow, that's when Venus is fully direct, and that's typically when eclipse integration is going to begin when we're thinking about the 6/18th month cycle of eclipses. Now, remember, we're talking about a high risk pregnancy. So, what is that usually, right? The environment is unstable. The mother is undergoing transformation in her body, and the soul entering is large. It's we need to make sure that it doesn't come out too soon. It needs to come to fullness. And so, if you can think about that, the retrogrades, the outer planet shifts, Venus, Mars, Saturn work, and Pluto and Aquarius, all of this was helping us to birth not just a new relationship or a new path, but a new spiritual identity. I don't know if you're here, raise your hand in the chat. Have you felt like your spiritual identity has been under attack? Because this is what you've been sensing. I also think that there has been some feminine wounding. We've been getting the real call, right? The relationships, the feminine energy. 2024 and 2025, it brought a deep review of self-worth wounds through Venus retrograde, abandonment through the Pisces themes we've been talking about, and over functioning in love, which is the Mars retrograde and Saturn in Pisces. You were tested last year and this year already. You've been tested in your relationships. And the illusion was that your worth depended on being chosen. But the test was actually, can you stay soft and sovereign in the fog? Can you not chase clarity, but instead become your own lighthouse? And that is something that I think that there's a lot of guides and readers and astrologers who they touch on it, but then some of the things that they encourage still encourage the chase. And very rarely do we actually hear this is how you become your own lighthouse. And there are many people who feel like, I don't want to hear that. Tell me something else, right? And so it can be hard to even try. But I do think that identifying what that might mean in yourself right now is going to be very important. What is your belief about a lighthouse? You've heard me, if you've been a part of my other ministry for years, say, be the lighthouse. You've heard me say, be the lighthouse on the shore. And I think about the Queen of Cups. Like, so you kind of know that this is necessary. Someone said, I don't even know who I am right now. Good. That means that you surrender to this process. You have done your job. So, okay, we need to talk about the call to action, because I think that for us as feminines, we want to know, what do I do then? And the feminine is being called to transcend emotional codependency and reclaim spiritual discernment. I know when we hear codependency, a lot of us shut down, go, oh, this message can't be for me because I'm independent. And it's like, look, if that's not you, fine. Maybe you just need to reclaim spiritual discernment. Or maybe you're very discerning, but it is the codependency. But let me explain why I think this could be true in your life, even if it might feel like, no, can't be me, can't be me. You need to be able to slow down and observe. Mercury and Pisces demand stillness. You have to refuse premature decisions. Like, if you're not meant to act yet, you're meant to feel your way through. You have to be able to release those, I guess it's kind of like savior victim dynamics, because Pisces tempts martyrdom and Scorpio demands power reclamation. You have to be able to strengthen your intuition without fear, where I am not going crazy, I am deconditioning myself. You have to let relationships shift and dissolve, which I think for many of my clients is the hardest part of this. This is the real part where they know, okay, there's the codependency. Look, not everything will survive this portal, and that is sacred. And sometimes we will hear something like that and we'll go, oh no, so you're saying my person isn't going to make it with me? And it's like, wait. I'm saying that you're not going to make it with you. Wait, what? How am I not going to make it with me? Because your old self can't come through. Okay? So let's talk about why it's worth it. Like, what are you birthing in the summer of 2025 or in this July season, July, August, right? That makes all of this worth it in the end. Think about even just being like a pregnant person where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about this song from, what was it she said? The nights that I carried you way down inside me, no charge. Is that Shirley Caesar? Who's saying that no charge song? I'm just thinking about where the mom says all the things that I did for you. I lost my body. I lost my time. I gave up my freedom. It's like all these things just to birth you, you little ungrateful. I'm just kidding. But so I want you to think about that, because sometimes we start to treat what we're about to birth as like that ungrateful, like, you don't know what I went through to make you. And it's like, actually, actually, you should be looking at this beautiful little baby like, I am so glad divine made me strong enough to create you. If this spiritual conception began in November 2024, then by July of 2025, you're birthing the embodied mystic leader that has been inside you and wanting to come out. A clear psychic channel. This is Mercury post retrograde, no more fog. Reclaimed sensuality and soul worth, okay, because the Venus rebirth is complete. You've activated a warrior heart. Mars exits retrograde shadow in May. Yeah. And a path aligned with divine timing, not ego agenda. July's potential is the emergence of aligned partnerships. So reunion is a huge thing for those who've been looking after karmic contracts end in spring. Public movement or announcement of new projects, because we're going in Leo season, we got Mercury direct, and spiritual service roles will crystallize. That's from the Virgo eclipse in March and then the Virgo solar eclipse to September. This is just a natural part. Like, the change is inevitable, okay? The reason you had to go through all of this, again, is it wasn't about punishment or loss. It was about soul positioning. This is the divine setup. In 2024, you were given false images to see if you'd trust your deeper knowing. You were confronted with silence to learn to hear the divine whispers in the wind. And you were sent distortion so you'd clarify your inner vision. The divine gave you fog so you'd build your own light. I think that there is a familiarity. There was a time where we felt what we are about to feel, what we felt. How do I explain this? This is not the first time you've gone through a birthing. This is not the first time that you have had some spiritual codes and soul codes rewritten. But on this level, yes. Still, there's a familiarity that comes with it that can give you a little bit of peace of mind, okay? And I think that it's important for us to kind of walk through some key periods where the spiritual birthing energy, the dismantling, this is disorientation, the soul level awakening, like felt this heavy, this cyclical, this transformative, so that you can think back in your life. So, okay. I will say that if we're asking the question, is this energy cyclical? The answer is yes and no. All right. The 2024, 2025 energy isn't a repeat, but it's like it rhymes with earlier periods. Okay. Does that make sense? Think of it like the next level of an ongoing spiral. You're facing familiar emotions, but this time with higher stakes and deeper awareness. And this specific spiritual storm is, it's like a layer cake with multiple overlapping retrogrades, outer planet transitions, eclipses, and karmic emotional signs like Pisces, Scorpio, Virgo. And together they are creating this powerful initiatory portal. And there have been others like it. I think that in late 2016, early 2017, that was when we felt our awakening spark. Venus was retrograde in Aries and Pisces. Okay, at that time there was eclipses in Leo and Aquarius. That's where like our identity and kind of our spiritual mission were activated. There was Saturn square Chiron, so there were core wounds resurfacing for healing, and there was some major awakenings happening for sacred partners. So if your spiritual or relationship journey began in 2017, 2016, around there, this is why. It was a portal into divine identity and sacred love activation. I think that phase was all about falling in love with the soul and falling apart at the same time, to be real. And then in 2020, there was another similar energy. This was the death portal. This was the global dark night. And we had the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn in January 2020. That was just massive structural collapse. Okay. There was Jupiter conjunct Pluto, spiritual expansion through loss and grief. Yeesh. There were eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn. So, home, safety, karma. And Chiron in Aries begins a very strong activation of identity wounding at that time. So many experienced an ego death. They lost their bearings, or just felt like totally untethered, you know? And 2020 was the year that prepared the ground for what we're birthing right now. It was like the dark womb, it was the compost before the seed. If anybody knows how soil is created, that was like the spiritual soil of what you're growing right now was being formed at that time. Yeah. I know there are going to be some people who it's hard to go back in time and hard to remember, and maybe we're just looking forward to but some of you are going to be like getting just rocked thinking about these dates, times, and how it's all connected to right now. I think another one was late 2022, early 2023. And this was the last contractions before the push, which we're we kind of dealt with that a little bit. We had Mars retrograde in Gemini, just scattered thinking, ego fragmentation. We had Mercury retrograde in Capricorn overlapping that Mars. We had Saturn in late Aquarius, and that was the end of a 3-year karmic cycle, like, ugh. And then Venus in shadow before Leo retrograde. This was a very, like, just highly mental, destabilizing time. I think a lot of us felt cut off from clear guidance, and it was like our old self was floating away, but the new one hadn't landed yet. And I think a way to really know that this was that is if you felt incredibly alone or like nothing made sense during that time, that was that pre-labor moment where we do want to rally around the pregnant woman giving birth, right? But we also kind of know, no, just maybe whoever's going to be in the room with her, right? Like, we kind of know that there are just certain points along that pregnancy season that you just can't mess with people. Okay. And I think being able to identify how that energy is coming back right now is just, it's going to be so powerful for you. But what is different about 2024/2025? I think that this isn't like just some sort of echo. It seems like a convergence, right? We're not just experiencing a Venus retrograde like 2017, a heavy Mars retrograde like 2022, um, that deep Mercury and Pisces fog like in 2019. We're experiencing all of them at once. Plus, Saturn and Pluto in transitioning signs, Uranus preparing to shift into Gemini, eclipses in Pisces and Virgo and Aries and Libra, which is just endings and identity reset. You guys, this isn't just a birth. This is a rebirth after lifetimes of gestation. This is massive energy, and it will make so much more sense soon. But I think that this message could help you through, almost like it's going to deliver some sort of spiritual doula energy into your life. So I guess I wanted to kind of see if there was a time that it just really did feel exactly this potent. And I don't think we felt just like this since 2012. I think that's the last time we had major Pisces, Scorpio, Aries action. There was a Venus retrograde. There was a Pluto Uranus square. That was like mass awakening and disruption. Plus, remember that 2012 shift, that infamous shift where spiritually initiated, it just helped many people into their soul path. 2012 was the beginning of this 13-year cycle, and 2025 is the completion and rebirth. It's huge, guys. So there is a reason why you might be feeling just so much right now. And it's because you're not just birthing this version of yourself, you're also releasing the past versions that we're still holding on. The illusions, the roles, the contracts, they're just being burnt off so that your soul can emerge. You're going to feel the echoes of 2012, the sudden spiritual awakening, the echoes of 2017, like that intense soul activation, 2020, that ego death and global collapse. I mean, look around. It's not like 2020, and yet look what's happening right now. You can just look at geopolitics and see even. And in 2022 and 2023, there was that confusion and forced attachment. And now we're just feeling the culmination, that the truth that was hidden behind every single loop. This is not the same lesson again. This is our final review before graduation. I think that you really are being set up for long term success. We all are. It just doesn't look like our vision. So we think we've already failed. This I think really hits hard for some of us because it speaks to this core illusion that's being dismantled in the 2024 to 2027 cycle. That's a huge astrological cycle that we have been able to identify as a part of the new wave prophecy. And I think that under this Pisces influence, which is not just about like linear or logical visible, it's about trust, it's about surrender, it's about inner insight. So there's a reason that it doesn't look like success yet. You're leaving the age of strategy and entering the age of surrender. The old version of success, the checklists and timelines and control, it's really dissolving, especially under Pisces eclipses and retrogrades. The external forms are fading on purpose so that you can stop chasing a false image and start receiving deeper alignment. And your vision, it was based on survival, not sovereignty. What you envisioned years ago, even as recently as 2020 or 2022, it was shaped by fear. It was shaped by lack. It was shaped by, if I just do this right, it will work. I think these transits, especially the Mercury and Venus retrograde in Pisces and eclipses in Pisces and Virgo, are reprogramming our internal compass. You're not just being rerouted, you're being recoded. And I think the hard part about this is that we are continuing to mistake disruption for punishment. I think that there are just many people that I work with, and I think I have a tendency to do this myself, where we just feel like we're being punished because life looks like the opposite of what we thought we earned. But under Pisces, the opposite view is often the right one. The delay is the protection, the silence is alignment, and the fog is a filter. I think that this is truly a setup for long-term success. I think that you're getting clarity on what's real versus illusion. The Mercury retrogrades in water signs in 2026 and 2027 that are coming, that's going to help strip away fantasy and false projections. We had to be ready for that, especially around like identity, emotions, and desire. This is crucial so that what we build next is actually sustainable and rooted in truth. We know what it's like to come into someone else's thing that they've built and it's not right. It is not sustainable. It's not rooted in truth. We've had to live in that world for so long to actually have the chance to build something that is an environment that makes sense for our soul. Oh my gosh, many of us have never had a chance to do that. Many of us didn't even know what was allowed. Pisces isn't chaos. It is cosmic initiation. It teaches us to feel the soul of a situation, not just its surface. So we're learning to receive, to be guided, to be in right timing instead of perfect planning. I know for me, that's huge. I'm gonna raise my hand right now, like, oh my gosh. But that's how we move from just surviving moments to thriving over decades. We're being positioned, not abandoned. The weirdness, the loss, the delay, yeah, it's real. But you're being put where your future needs you to be, not where your past wanted you to be. That's the hard grace of these transits. They deny the ego to protect the soul's actual path. So what this means right now is that if you're in a season of confusion, you need to know you're not broken. You are in spiritual labor. If you feel like your dreams are fading, don't worry. You're shedding old skins. You're not losing your future. If you're doubting your intuition, you're being trained to hear it more clearly. What you're, quote, losing is actually what you can't take with you. It's what can't come with you to your next level. So if you are hoping to reframe this, this is what I think that we should be saying to ourselves. My success has not left me. It is being rerouted to meet the real version of me, the one I'm still becoming. The divine hasn't betrayed my vision. It's correcting it. So I won't waste my life building something I'll outgrow. I haven't failed. I've outgrown the version of success that was never mine to begin with. This moment is sacred because it's initiatory, not final. And someone is trying to convince us this is final. This is it. But you have not missed the boat. You are the boat. You're being built wave by wave. What if your greatest breakthrough looks nothing like your vision board? What if you're not failing? What if you're just being rerouted to a destiny bigger than you imagined? You haven't failed. You have outgrown the fantasy. And now the truth gets to rise in you, through you, out of the lighthouse. I'm about to go over to Ascent to focus on the next part of this. So if you're interested, let me make sure I provide the link for you. Ooh, I don't know where it is right this second, but I will give it to you. Wait. I do it. It's right here. I'm gonna put the link in the chat for you if you're interested in joining us there. Um, I'm really happy that those of you who are here got to see this. YouTube may try to privatize this video, so hopefully I can fix that. If it goes away really quick, don't worry. I'm going to try. Give me like 2 seconds to try to refresh this and bring it back. And then we will meet over at the Ascent video because there is more to this download. And we're actually going to focus more on the sacred partnership aspect of this. But I thought that feminine energies around the world needed to know what was going on. So that is what this video was for. I love you so much. If you're interested in working with me, I typically don't let people know that on this channel, but I do have personal services. I do calls during the week and on Sundays. I also do personals. So there's a link to my website if you're interested. All right, everybody, join me over on the Ascent page. I'm going to close this out. And if you have questions about this, or if you have anything that you want to share, if you're like, hey, I think I have something valuable, please do leave it in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I will talk to you later. See you on the Ascent page if you're interested. Peace.